Have you ever really looked at a building and wondered, what's its story? I mean, if you look close enough, our buildings are basically history books written in brick and wood and steel. They tell us everything, who we were, what we cared about, and how we saw our world. So let's do it. Let's dive in and read the story of America through its architecture.
So what is that story exactly? Well, it's a saga, really. A tale of adapting to a new land, of revolution, and this constant, ongoing search for a national identity. We're going to journey through time and see how the very structures we live and work in actually reflect the soul of the nation.
All right, here's our game plan. We'll start at the very beginning with the continent's original architects. Then we'll jump into the colonial era, see how a brand new republic tried to build its identity in stone, witness the radical break of modernism, and finally, take a look at where we are right now.
Now this is important. Our story does not begin with European settlers. Nope, it starts thousands of years earlier, with the first American architects, people who designed and built in this incredibly profound relationship with the land itself.
Yeah, long before anyone else set foot here, indigenous peoples were creating these amazing, sophisticated structures that were perfectly suited to where they lived. Just think about the ancient Pueblo people, whose descendants built places like Taos Pueblo. This isn't some ancient ruin, It's a living community that has been continuously inhabited for over 1,000 years. It's a masterclass in sustainable design.
And what's just mind-blowing is the diversity. There was no one-size-fits-all Native American style. Out in the blazing hot Southwest, you had the Pueblo people using thick adobe walls to stay cool. On the Great Plains, the iconic teepee was this brilliant portable home for a nomadic life. Then you go to the Pacific Northwest and find these massive plank longhouses that could shelter entire communities. Each and every design was a genius-level response to culture and climate. Okay, so now the story takes a huge turn with the arrival of Europeans. They brought all their old building traditions with them, of course, but this new world had its own set of rules. They had to adapt, they had to innovate, and they ended up creating something totally new from their old blueprints.
And you can literally see this happening in real time. Down in Louisiana, French settlers built homes with these deep, surrounding porches to survive the crushing, swampy heat. But way up in freezing New England, English colonists were building these compact saltbox houses, all huddled around a massive central chimney for warmth. The American landscape itself was shaping the architecture, creating these unique regional flavors, from Spanish missions out in California to Dutch farmhouses in New York.
As the colonies started to get wealthier, their ambitions really started to show in their buildings. This new, much more formal style took over. Georgian. It was all about order, balance, perfect symmetry. You've seen it, a front door right in the center, windows perfectly lined up. This style was meant to project stability, power, and sophistication. It was the look of the British establishment, right before everything was about to change.
So after the Revolution, the new United States needed way more than a new flag. It needed a new architectural language. It needed buildings that looked like a republic, that absolutely screamed democracy and freedom.
So, where do you look for inspiration? The young nation looked way back to the classical past. First up was the federal style, inspired by the Roman Republic. Very elegant, very restrained. But then came the Greek revival, and it was much, much bolder. So why Greece? Well, because Greece was the birthplace of democracy. All those imposing columns and temple-like fronts you see on old banks and courthouses, that was a statement. The buildings themselves were basically declaring, we are the new heirs to democracy's ancient ideal.
And then the 20th century hit, and with it came this dramatic, radical break from the past. A whole new generation of architects got sick of just copying old styles. In an age of skyscrapers and cars and electricity, they wanted an architecture that looked forward, not backward.
And believe me, nothing screams forward quite like Art Deco. This was the style of the machine age. It's sleek, it's geometric, it's full of energy. All those zigzags and chevrons, they captured the pulse of the Jazz Age, and its stepped-back form was the perfect language for that brand-new, totally American invention, the skyscraper.
But there was another vision of modernism, one that came from maybe America's greatest architect, Frank Lloyd Wright. His big idea was something he called organic architecture. For Wright, a building shouldn't just be some box dropped onto the land. No, it should grow out of its site, almost like it was a natural part of the landscape. And that one simple idea, it would change everything.
What's so revolutionary is how he did it.
He literally called it the destruction of the box. Step 1, he just rejected the whole idea of a rigid room. Then, by moving the building supports away from the corners and using these incredible cantilevered roofs, he could just open the whole structure up. He created a completely new reality of flowing, open spaces that would, believe me, fundamentally change the American home forever.
And Wright's vision wasn't the only game in town. Modernism kept evolving. The modernist style of the 30s had these smooth, aerodynamic curves, almost like a futuristic train. Then, after World War II, that morphed into what we call mid-century modern, with its wide-open floor plans, huge walls of glass, and low-slung roofs. It perfectly captured the optimism of a new, suburban America.
Which brings us all the way to today. And the thing is, the story of American architecture isn't finished. Not even close. In fact, it's constantly being rewritten, with new voices adding new chapters all the time. And in this powerful, amazing, full-circle moment, contemporary indigenous architects are now blending cutting-edge modern techniques with traditional forms. They're creating cultural centers and schools and museums that are both totally modern and deeply rooted in their heritage. They're using architecture as this bold, beautiful expression of cultural identity and survival. So, when we look back, this whole journey is pretty incredible, right? From the deep, ancient roots of indigenous foundations, through all those colonial adaptations, a new nation's search for its own symbols, the radical break of modernism, and now the living, breathing legacy we see all around us today.
Which, of course, leaves us with one last really big question. What are our glass towers and our sprawling suburbs and our new sustainable designs going to say about us 100 years from now? Just look around you. The story of America is still being built every single day. What chapter are we writing right now?